Okay, today I don't want to do so much of a detailed tutorial as just show a couple of effects, and in particular I want to demonstrate something I showed in class, which is kind of a built-in effect in After Effects, and then a more expensive add-on plugin, and kind of show you the difference in some of these things. A lot of the effects built into After Effects and the plugins it already has are great, and you can do a ton with them, but there's also some places where it's a lot easier to do more complex effects or particular types of visuals by getting some different plugins and such, and so I just kind of want to show a little bit of that. So what I thought I'd do here, because it's a great example of this kind of thing, is just say I had this shot here and I want to kind of make it snowy and have a little snow coming down on it, and I'll show two different ways to do that. First thing, which has nothing to do with making the snow come down, but I just want to make this shot look a little snowier. So what I'm going to do is go to my change color plugin, and I just sort of selected something on the ground here, so you can kind of see what's selected, all this stuff that just turned way to white when I did that. And so see what I'm trying to do here is take that ground and just sort of lighten it up a little bit, make it look a little more like there's some snow on the ground. The reason I'm getting this sort of blockiness right here is I don't have a sort of softness to how tightly it's selecting things, so I'm going to lower my tolerance here quite a bit and make it still pretty soft. So something like that. I don't want to spend a lot of time detailing this, but just you can see the difference there is, you sort of made it look like maybe there already is some snow on the ground. All right, that's close enough for purposes of what we're doing here. Okay, so I'm going to make a new solid first off. And I would do this in either case. I'm going to call this my snow. I'll say via CC Snowfall because that's the effect I'm going to do. And I'll just make that the composition size. Okay, and when it comes through here, it's a black solid, so it's just showing up as a black overlay here. First thing I want to do, this is something we haven't looked at before, is I'm going to change the blending mode to screen. And what that's going to do is when I put an effect on this, it'll make where the effect is show up and everywhere else sort of be transparent. And my effect here is a built-in one to start with. It's just called CC Snowfall. And so I'll put that in. And got a whole bunch of different settings here that I can use. And let's make these flakes a little bigger. You kind of see them a little more. Okay, so now you can start to see there's some flakes coming down on there. You can make them varying in the size a little bit. And I'll make them a little less opaque, a little less transparent so you can see them a little bit more. Interesting thing here to play with is the scene depth. So you'll notice I have it set to a certain amount of snowflakes it's generating. Now if I shrink the scene depth, it's actually going to sort of, oops, there. It's actually sort of crowding the snow more, and what's happening is it's making that same amount of snowflakes through theoretically less depth. And if I go the other way and make the scene a lot deeper, it's kind of spreading out those snowflakes through a greater sense of depth, theoretically. So I could do something like this, and I've got some snow falling, and if we were to play this a little bit, scroll through here, you can kind of see the snow falling there. And something else I want to do here, just to make this a little more realistic, is I'd like to have the sense that like there's some snow that's falling in front of the actor here and some that's falling behind them. So I'm going to duplicate that layer, Command D, and we'll put one layer in front of the snow, so right now we don't see any of the snow. And then I'm going to go to my pen tool with G and just kind of mask out the person here. I obviously could spend more time doing this in a more detailed way. I could even go into my rotoscoping tools up here if I really wanted to be super precise. But in this case, I'm just going to kind of edge it out there roughly. Maybe I'll feather that just a little bit. Okay. And so now you see what I've got is I've got the snow sort of falling in front of her. Then I can make another copy of my snow effect. And so now I have sort of the snow effect in the front that we're seeing. Then I have the actor matted out. Then I have the snow again, and then I have the back layer, which is the rest of this stuff. What I'm going to do on this one that's in front of her is I'm going to shrink the step down a lot and make it a lot fewer flakes. So we see a little bit of snow coming behind her and more snow falling in front of her. And last thing I could do is if I want the snow to kind of match this background here, I can go to the eyedropper here and just click on something that's the color of the background. You see now it sort of looks like it's matching that color, whatever that happened to be. I think I actually did not do that right. Oh, right. Let's go back to my original layer and pick some of the snow there. Okay. Again. Okay, and so the snow's sort of falling there, and we now have a little bit of this coming in front. Let's make it do a little bit more. Alright, so I got some snow falling here, some snow back there. And this gives us something that kind of works. Let me do a quick render of this so you can see what it looks like. And I'm just going to render, it's about a 5-second clip. Add that to the render queue. And I'm just going to render this in a low-res version and put it right on the desktop. And I'll render that, and it's going to take a minute, so I'll come back as soon as it's done. Okay, now that's done rendering, so go over and pull it up in QuickTime here, and you see we've got this snow effect. We've got kind of more going back here, less over here. You can also see the sort of quick, crappy matte I did showing up there. Obviously, we'd want to keyframe that if we really wanted this to work right. But you can see right there where some of the particles are sort of being blocked by it, so that's why we get more of this falling in the background. Okay, so that looks okay. It's not terrible, and we could tweak this more and get something that looks a little bit better with this built-in effect. But I want to show you what we could do with some more advanced effects if we had those. So I'm just going to kill all that and go back to my original layer here. Okay, and this time I'm going to use a plugin you have to purchase. It's called Particular. It's very common, one in use. It's made by Red Giant. And this is a particle generator, so it's like CC Particle Playground. Particle Playground right here. That's built into After Effects, which is a little more advanced one. And one of the things I'd want you to notice is if you look at sort of the options I have here with my CC Snowfall, I have a bunch of different things I could do. Like there's some decent variety. I could add in some wind and make the particles kind of blowing a little bit to the side or something if I wanted to do that. But let's compare that to what I'm going to have available to me with Particular. So again, I'm going to make a new solid layer. I could do Command Y or go here. Command Y, there we go, solid. And let's call this Snow Particular. Okay, and again, I made just a black solid object, so it's just going to block everything to start with. Throw my particular on it. And you immediately see how many more options there are here because each of these sort of categories has a whole slew of options within them. So I have a lot more control over what I'm doing here. So I'm going to just jump to sort of the middle of my timeline here for a second to show you what happens. And I mentioned it's a particle emitter, so you can see it's kind of emitting particles from this center point here. And so for snow, first thing I want to do is just kind of set it up so it's something that looks kind of like snow. I'm going to make a box emitter instead of one point because I actually want it to be emitting from kind of all the way across the screen. And my emitter size, X, Y, Z, so X is width, so I'm going to make this much bigger so it can spread all the way across my screen. And I'm going to come back and talk about the Z in a little bit. For the moment, we'll leave that, and I'm going to go into here to particle for a second and make my size pretty huge just so you can see what I'm doing as I'm playing with this. This is actually bigger than we would actually want to use, but just so you can kind of see what the effect is doing. Okay, so now I've got these emitting here. I'm going to go ahead and smooth out the position subframe there. And I have some other options here within my emitter, kind of how that's going. For the moment, I'm going to go off of that except for one thing. So if I go to the beginning here, you'll notice there's nothing because it hasn't emitted any particles yet. And as I scroll forward, then there would start to be some particles. In my emitter, I have this option for pre-run, and I'm going to crank that up to like 100%. And what that means is it's basically going to start the emitter running well before, in this case, 100% of the time of the length of the composition before this actually starts going, because I want there to already be snow on the screen when this starts in this case. Okay, so let me look in my particle options here. So one thing is I want these particles to last at least as long as my composition, because when they're falling, I don't want them to just sort of disappear. So I'm going to just pick a time that's significantly longer than my composition. And here my composition is about 5 seconds, so I'll just say they will live for 20 seconds. I'm going to change my particle type to a cloudlet, just that's going to look a little bit more like a snowflake once I shrink these down. Size is still too big. Let's give a little random variation to the size. And I'm going to make them not 100% see-through, but not 100% opaque either. I could adjust the color, have that changing, so on and so forth. I'll go down to my physics here. A couple of different things I could do. I'm going to use a air model with a little bit of gravity so that they fall downwards. Now they're falling down. And I can put in some air resistance if I want to make this a little more accurate. Give them a little bit of a spin. And I'm just sort of kind of randomly tweaking in some settings here, doing some things I think will roughly work. But just to give you the sense of how many more options there are in here than we had in the sort of default snowfall option. Okay, so I got something that looks somewhat better here. Let's shrink these particles down now to something that's going to look a little more like snow. That's maybe a little too small. Something like that. Still probably a little too opaque. There we go. Now you notice right now they're kind of emitting from the middle of the screen here, so I'm going to go and actually put them emitting from way up here above the screen so that they fall down from there. You can kind of see that happening. And here's the other thing I want to do. I mentioned this Z thing that I was going to come back to. I'm going to give this a lot of depth. In fact, I'm going to type in like 7,000 here to get a sense of what that would look like. And what you'll notice now is I've got some that look sort of like closer to me, some that look farther away. Let's build this up a little bit more. That's maybe a little too much. And I've got this sort of size variation stuff going on now, so suddenly I've got just a lot more interesting things going on. Dial this down a little bit. Kind of match that background snow a little bit better. Just got a lot more variation here, and when we watch them fall, they're going to fall in a more naturalistic kind of way. Messing with the settings like this in a way that I didn't have that same kind of control with the default CC Snowfall. I'm going to do one other thing and just recreate the same sort of thing I had. Let's duplicate this layer so that I have some snow falling, in front of her here. And the difference here is this one in front of her. So the one that's not being blocked by the mask. What I'd like to do with that, I'm going to relabel this just so I can keep track of them in front. So now I have two generators. I'm going to make this one generating a lot less. And not so much of a depth to it, because I really just want the stuff that would be hitting in front of us, and I'm actually going to bring it those a little bit closer to us. Okay, and so now if I turn those back on, I got some that are falling over here closer to us, but not as many, and then I've got the other ones that are kind of filling out the whole frame there. Let's make these ones that are closer to us just a little bit bigger. Okay. And end up with something like this. Again, it's kind of hard to see. I'm running this off my laptop. I can't like preview this at real speed very well, so let's go ahead and render this out and take a look at what that looks like. And I'll do the same settings I did on the last one. Okay, and we'll come back as soon as this is done. Okay, now our render's done, so let's take a look and see what that looked like. So here was that. And again, they got that sloppy matting, and you can look right around here as I sort of scroll this through, and you'll see some things that kind of just disappear when they hit that mask line, which isn't quite in the right spot. But I think what you can tell is the sort of snow here looks a lot better, more realistic compared to what we had before with the built-in effect, which was like this. And obviously we could tweak these, if we thought these particles are too big, we could change that, we could make them more transparent. The color here doesn't quite match as well how I set it up. So there's a lot of things we could tweak, but I just have a lot more options, more power with this, which was kind of the key point. Look at these things. So that's a quick demo of particle generator, one of the ones built in, and then this other one that's an optional add-on just to kind of demonstrate that and some things you could play with. I'd certainly recommend, if you're interested in particle stuff, go in and play with Particle Playground. Just to kind of show you what's in here. If I get down Particular for a second. you'll see I have a lot of different options for things with this, and I do have some choices in terms of gravity. I can make things bounce, I can make them hit a wall, and so a lot of fun things that you can mess around with here to try to get the effect you're looking for. That's it for today.